Hello, everyone. So today we are going to be talking about the cancer treatment and following the money throughout that process. My name is Simran. The other group members are Casey, Kara, and Deja. So let's get started. So let's get started with a little bit of introduction and background about cancer, and then we will talk about various different types of treatments that exist. So cancer is a disease in which some of the body's cells grow uncontrollably and spread to other parts of the body in some cases. Cancer can start almost anywhere in the human body. There are more than 100 types of cancers, and the type of cancer is usually named after the organ or the tissue where it first originates from. Talking about the prevalence of cancer, in 2020, over 1.8 million new cases of cancer were diagnosed. And from the data that was collected from 2013 to 2017, the incidence rate of cancer was calculated to be 442.4 per 100,000 people per year, meaning out of the 100,000 people, 442 people were diagnosed with cancer. And the mortality rate was 158.3 per 100,000 people, meaning 158.3 people died due to their cancer diagnosis. Treatment of cancer is dependent on the type and the stage of the cancer, but it's mostly a combination of treatments. It can be either surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, or in various other cases, new pharmaceutical drugs as well. In 2015, the national cost of cancer was estimated to be $190.2 billion, but in 2020, that cost was $208.9 billion, meaning that there was an increase of 10% in the overall cost that's associated with cancer and cancer care. So these cost estimates include cancer attributable costs for medical services as well as oral prescription drugs. The national cost reflects prevalence of the disease, the treatment patterns, as well as the cost for different types of care that's being provided to the patients. The first figure on the right is comparing the national cost of cancer in 2010 to 2020. It's broken down into three sections of initial, continuing, and last. Initial is when the patient is first diagnosed. During is the continuation of the treatment. And last is either when the patient is terminally ill or is in remission. As you can see, the initial cost of cancer care in 2010 was about $40,000. And in 2020, it's almost at $48,000, which is a 19.4% increase. Similar trends can be seen for both continuing and for last categories as well, where the costs have increased 31% as well as 28.3% respectively. Now let's talk further about the impact of these increasing costs of care on the patients. Let's talk about the cost of cancer and the impact it has on the patients financially. According to CDC, 3 in every 10 people with cancer will change their course of treatment due to the treatment costs. Many people with cancer make changes in their medication because they worry they can't afford what their doctors are prescribing for them. People try in many ways to keep those costs down. Some of the ways that may not be safe and may not work very well for their cancer. So countless patients will skip their medication to make it last longer, or will buy their cancer prescription drugs from another country, or will even end up using alternative therapies that are proven not to work, just so that they don't have to drown financially when it comes to their care. So patients will go to these links simply because they're unable to keep up with the cost of the treatment. On the figure on the right, there is a breakdown of the cost in regards to cancer treatment. So it's broken down by the source of payment. So as you can see, even though private insurance does cover 44% of it, and Medicaid covers 4%, the patients are still accounting for $3.9 billion for out-of-pocket costs. And that's something that's a huge number compared to other diseases or even some chronic conditions. The numbers are never this high for out-of-pocket costs for the patients. According to a 2019 survey that was conducted, it was found that over 63% of cancer patients have reported financial struggles after their cancer diagnosis. AARP magazine shows the average cost of cancer treatment runs anywhere in the $150,000 range. There's a heavy cost to cancer. You can see the impact in the second picture where the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics found the average monthly income for an individual in the year 2018 was about $3,600 before taxes, while the average monthly cost for cancer treatments ranges from $1,000 to $12,000 for chemo, over $9,000 for radiation, and anywhere from $10,000 to $13,000 for immunotherapy. And these prices have been on a trending increase. So as new drugs are coming about, these prices for immunotherapy or the new drugs are not covered by insurances, and they are considered to be out of pocket. So in this presentation, we will further go into detail and try to break down why these prices are so high for these treatments and where does the money for these treatments actually go.
Thank you, Simran. When it comes to treating cancer, why is it so expensive? Where exactly does the money go? Cancer treatment involves more than the cancer-killing agents like radiation or chemotherapy drugs. So if we follow the money for cancer treatment, we see a long list of expenses. And some of the most common ones include laboratory tests like blood tests or radiology procedures like MRIs, X-rays, or CT scans. And with these tests and procedures come equipment fees and room fees. And at some hospitals, there are even parking fees. And let's not forget charges for the specialists, like the surgeon, pathologist, anesthesiologist, and radiologist, just to name a few. Travel is also an additional expense many families endure, and this can include lodging, transportation, and meals for patients and any accompanying family members. But most of the money for treating cancer does, however, go toward removing the cancer cells from the body through either surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. So now let's take a closer look at the charges associated with the two of these treatments. So this slide shows us a breakdown of charges for radiation therapy and chemotherapy using figures obtained from costhelperhealth.com. And these figures are the actual charges from St. Elizabeth Regional Medical Center in Nebraska. And as you can see from the breakdown, treating cancer is both complex and costly, and each piece of the treatment plan can result in a billable service that contributes to the skyrocketing price of the cancer treatment. So looking at this breakdown, we see that the largest portion of the money goes to the pharmaceutical companies responsible for manufacturing the chemotherapy drugs. With price tags up to $977,000 annually, just how much money are some of these companies making? Here we see the top 3 most expensive chemotherapy drugs on the market in 2021. Danyelza, which is used to treat neuroblastoma, comes in at $977,000 annually. Follitin by Allos Therapeutics is used to treat T-cell lymphoma, costs about $793,000 annually. And then Blincyto by Amgen for lymphoblastic leukemia comes in at $712,000 annually. So if we multiply these prices by the number of new cases, it's clear to see where the money is going. It's no surprise that big pharma companies are reporting record-breaking profits year over year.
According to a study conducted by the Moran Company in 2018, hospitals receive on average more than 250% what they paid for a medicine after negotiations with commercial payers. A study published in American Journal of Managed Care examined the price of care at more than 3,200 hospitals in all 50 states and found that there was a substantial charge variation among the hospitals and across oncology in America, and with some charging up to 15 times the allowable amount by Medicare. Among the rising issue of the cost of cancer treatment in America, there is the blaring conflict of interest of physician markups due to payoff. Many call this the cancer in cancer. Financial conflicts of interest is when the researcher has a beneficiary relationship with the drug that they are researching. There is limited evidence on the effects of financial conflicts of interest on guideline recommendations, but suggests that authors of clinical practice guidelines with industry FCOIs are more likely to recommend specific drugs and assess clinical trial results more favorably from those institutions. A study conducted by the Journal of American Medical Association found that 87% of those that wrote the guidelines for cancer treatment received $10,000 on average from pharmaceutical companies. The relaxed policies regarding policy on conflict of interest and relationship with the pharma companies can interfere with the decision-making process for these researchers and physicians. Another study showed that oncologists receive payments of $500 to $1,000 to incentivize them into prescribing generic chemotherapy drugs. This is contributing to unnecessary expenses for medical spending, large out-of-pocket payments for patients, and high health care spending in America. Sometimes other treatments that may be more cost-effective are relevant and available for the cancer that these patients have. And physicians prescribe these chemotherapy treatments due to the payoffs that they will receive back from pharma. While physician-industry relationships have several benefits between the conflict of interest, between the conflicts of interest and the contribution to higher healthcare spending, this may be a policy that needs to be made stricter.
The pink breast cancer ribbon is by far the most publicly seen and well-known symbol of the cancer foundations here in the United States, with an entire month dedicated to breast cancer awareness, filled with charity races, and our NFL teams and other big-time sports players wearing pink to help contribute to the cause. Until recently, it was not the leading cause of deaths related to cancer, though. Lung cancer actually was. This inequitable funding does not only reach as far as advertisement, but through public health funding organizations as well, such as the U.S. National Institutes of Health. As you can see above, funding for prostate cancer was less than half of breast cancer research funding and only 20% less deaths in 2015. Here is a more up-to-date listing of funding from the National Cancer Institute, still showing breast cancer having the largest amount of funding in 2018. Research shows that survivors are a leading push for more funding. The 5-year survival rate for a person with stage 3 breast cancer is about 72%, as opposed to only 4% for lung cancer. Survivors are more likely to find ways to contribute money towards organizations that speak to them and their fight. Additionally, pharmaceutical companies are more likely to put their funding towards research that they expect to yield results from and eventually be able to market. Thank you for listening to our presentation on following the money involved in the treatment of cancer. Our group ultimately concluded that many patients changed their treatment plans due to the expenses of their life-threatening illness, and oncologists are some of the only physicians that receive a markup on chemotherapy treatment plans. We also found that the source of research funding is highly inequitable, and reform is needed to allocate those funds based on mortality and occurrences. It seems that a popularity contest has formed over specific types of cancer, and funding should not be limited due to one charity bringing more